going south, going south. Going south.
Punishment fits a crime. Nothing beats mutilation. Humiliation's a disease. Nothing beats humiliation. Nothing beats them like a car in a club. Nothing beats them like a car in jail. Nothing beats their heads like a car with a club. Nothing beats their heads in like a car in jail. Nothing hurts them like a cop with a club. Nothing beats them like a cop with a club. Nobody rapes them like a cop with his club. Nothing hurts them like a cop when he's done. Nobody beats them like a cop in jail. Nobody burns them like a cop with a match. Nobody burns their bodies like a cop in jail. Nobody burns their skin like a cop with a match. Nobody has as much fun as a cop. And he hurts. Humiliation's a disease. Hurts. Disease.
Now, Greta, we can't really see the audience very well, but I think you know that they were on their feet, right? It is such an amazing treat for me to be here with Greta. This is the first day that we are meeting, but I feel like we know each other. And I just wanted to start, Greta, by talking to you about the way that you come to be with us here tonight. We all know that you took a very small sailboat, entirely powered by wind, a little bit of solar panel. It took you 15 days to cross the Atlantic. And we were all worried about you. But there was a little part of me as I thought of you out there where I was like, I hope it's a little bit fun. Because I know that you are driven by fear, as you've spoken about, but I also know that you're driven by love, that you have a strong connection to nature, to animals. So I would love for you to describe for us a little bit about what it was like out there in the Atlantic.
Well, it was different from everything I have ever done in my life before, but it was actually incredible. I wish more people had the opportunity to do that, and I feel very lucky that I got the opportunity to do that. And of course, it was very intense. At some points, it was like one day it was so rough you couldn't stand up. Sometimes, and then sometimes you can sit out on the deck and just watch the ocean and dolphins, and it was incredible. And I was very lucky I didn't get seasick at all, so I got to enjoy the trip, and I think I enjoyed very much to be disconnected from everything and from everyone, and to not have anything you need to do, but just be there and just spend literally hours just watching the ocean. And yeah, that was incredible. And also the beauty of it, because it is wilderness, and it is, you can see much of the wildlife there. And on in the nights, if it was calm, you could go out. When you go to the bucket, you go out, and then you could see the stars very clearly, much more clearly than you can do on land. I mean, there's no air pollution, and you could see the Milky Way, and it is undescribable. So,
thank you for that. It's so beautiful. And I know that you were disconnected, but you seemed to somehow get some news at various points. And while you were at sea, we heard the devastating news about the Amazon. What was it like for you to be out there in that ocean wilderness and hear about what was happening?
Well, it was one of the people on the boat. His wife called on the satellite phone and explained that the Amazon is on fire. And right after that call, he called for everyone else of us and said, like, the Amazon is burning, and that it was serious, and it was just so shocking, and it was so hard to realize, because being on the ocean, you cannot do anything, you cannot impact it in any way, you cannot do anything about it. You just have to sit there, and it was horrible to sort of the knowledge of that. But and then when I came to shore was the first time I could see pictures of it, and to really find out the details about it. And I remember that was one of the first things I did when I came to shore, because, so.
So you've been here for a little bit more than a week now. Is this your first time in the U.S.?
No, I have been here before, but I don't remember that because I was too small. I think I was 3 years old. I have pictures, but no memories.
Do you have any observations to share after having been here for a little while about some of the differences?
Well, you mean in the climate debate, or just...
Or generally, the state of the subways. You're allowed to bash New York subways if you want to.
You use a lot of air conditioning here.
Not tonight, though.
Not in here, but backstage, it's cold. And it was many impressions, because coming from that boat where you have nothing, and I remember the first thing I noticed when I woke up that morning when we had arrived was that it suddenly smelled something. Pollution, of course, but at least it was something. And going from one extreme to New York City, it's the exact opposite. So it took a few days to really get used to it, and especially during the nights when you were up walking to the toilet, of course, you almost fell down because everything was so shaky, and it was amazing to shower for the first time. Yeah, but there's a lot of differences, and also in the way we talk about the climate crisis. Of course, here it's more like something you either believe in or not believe in, and where I'm from, it's more like it's a fact.
So speaking of facts, one of the consistent messages that you've taken into all of these spaces, and that I know you will be continuing to take, is that you're not telling politicians what they should do, you're telling them that they should be listening to scientists. And as a researcher and writer about climate change myself, I'm always struck that your speeches are so careful and could easily be footnoted with all of the best scientific reports. And so I'm wondering how you work with climate scientists, what your relationship is.
I have a very close relationships to a lot of climate scientists, and that I think is necessary when you have so many people listening to what you're saying, and especially when you hold speeches that is going to be seen by a lot of people. You need to have a solid ground. You cannot just make assumptions. You need to have facts on everything and sources of everything. And so when I have made a speech like this is almost finished, I send a copy to, it could be one scientist, sometimes it's 5 or 6 scientists, and to just let them have a look and make sure everything is as it is supposed to be, and that nothing can be defined in a different way, and that it cannot be misunderstood. And also I ask them sometimes personal questions like, what what does this mean, and why are they talking about that, and why, and so on, to have them explain things to me, and that has helped a lot.
It's amazing. I mean, just this idea that you've been skipping school is so absurd to me, you know? I mean, this is just an incredible advanced level education that you've given yourself on the fly and under so much scrutiny, because very, very quickly you've become really the most prominent voice of the climate movement, and that is a really heavy responsibility. And you're clearly really careful about that. I wanted to ask you about this other responsibility that you've taken on, which has to do with being very public from the beginning about being on the autism spectrum. It was in your Twitter bio, climate activist with Asperger's. And that leads to a whole other level of responsibility, because you're probably also the most prominent person in the world right now who self-identifies as being, being on the autism spectrum. And that's really, really important to people who identify with it. And I can speak about that personally because I have a 7-year-old son with special needs, and you are his hero. And you know, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in that video, you can't be it if you can't see it. And you're out there being this incredible role model, and to me, really embodying this sort of slogan that we hear, diversity is our strength, right? You have talked so beautifully about how the way your mind works is what allows you to focus, right? And it's also partly what allows you not to really care what other people are focused on, right? Whether it's like imitating celebrities on Instagram or whatever it is, like you know what's important. So how have you navigated that? How have you decided to be so public? You know, it's left you open to terrible attacks. How have you made these decisions?
I really didn't think about being public of it, because it was in my profile and biography on social media, and I didn't think about it. I mean, it was just, why should I not be public about that? Why should that be something to not be public about? But then I sort of noted that it was a big thing, that not many people were public about their diagnosis. But I just think it's so important because still many people see it to have a diagnosis, to be neurodiverse, to be something negative, and it doesn't have to be. And of course, it can limit you in many ways. It has limited me a lot, but you can also convert that into be something good, something positive, and that is what I have done, and that is what I think we should encourage more people to do. Because I am different from everyone else, and it is thanks to my diagnosis, my Asperger's syndrome, and because without that I wouldn't have noticed this crisis. I remember, because everyone else, they saw the same thing, they saw the same pictures and films as I did, the destruction of nature and what was happening with the climate, but no one of them seemed to really, I didn't understand why their lives wasn't turned upside down like mine was, and the spectrum, and that is, of course, that cannot just be a coincidence. I can't, for example, understand that someone can say like, yeah, climate change is very important, and then not do anything about it. Because if you know how important it is, then you know that you also have to do something, that you also have responsibility to do something, and so yeah.
But I think this is what, thank you, Greta.
And
I think, you know,
and
yeah.
and without my diagnosis, also I wouldn't have been such a nerd, and then I wouldn't have had the time and energy to just look through the boring facts and still be interested.
And I think there's something so powerful about the fact that, I think so many people who are neurotypical, right? Part of what allows us to live with these unbearable levels of cognitive dissonance is that we take our social cues from each other. We look, you learn about 1 million species are facing extinction, and people are horrified by that. That is their first reaction. But then you look around and it's like everybody's acting as if it isn't a big deal, and they're on to the next thing, and they're watching, apocalypse porn on Netflix, and that's, and then you're like, well, I guess that means that it's not so bad. And so you repress that first impulse. And what you're saying is you weren't able to repress that first impulse, and so you actually said, no, the house is on fire. And now what's interesting is that so many people who had that first reaction but suppressed it are seeing you out there, and now they're trusting their first instinct. And you're helping people to come to that. So that's beautiful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can support you, if there's any ways that we can support you with these disgusting trolls that go after you. I'm Canadian, and these are not marginal figures. We have the leader of a board. Should they be reported? What do we do with these guys? These bullies?
I mean, obviously, I can't.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's sometimes tough because they're also, but because they go after like things like my personality and how I am, how I look, how I behave, and I mean that is just a sign that you are winning, and that they don't have any more arguments to go after you. And because, I mean, I'm not the enemy, at least I hope not, but many people seem to think that, but they cannot argue against, because I'm only saying what the science is saying, and you can't argue against physics. You cannot, so that's why they go after me and these other activists who are trying to communicate this. And if there's a fire there, and I say it's a fire there, we need to we need to put it out. Yes, we need to put that fire out. It's like the most reasonable reaction would be that you look at the fire and say like, oh, we need to put it out. Yeah. But now they seem to be like, they look at the fire and they look at me like, what are you wearing? And
So let's talk about something that really matters a lot, which is September the 20th, and what your hopes are. What do we have to? What do you want to happen on September 20th?
I want September 20th to be another tipping point, a social tipping point where people start to realize the urgency of the crisis, and there will be so many people that we cannot look away anymore, and that we have people of all ages, of all parts of society standing together, fighting for the same cause, because that would be so powerful. And I think it could have a huge impact, especially since on the 23rd it is the UN Climate Action Summit. And I think it could have, at least I hope it could have a difference on that summit, that we really show that we are many, and that we demand that you listen to the science, and that you actually take your responsibility and do what you need to do. And so I hope that it will definitely be some kind of tipping point, and that it will also open the eyes of people and make sure that for this summit the world leaders have all eyes on them, and so that they have such a feeling that they cannot embarrass themselves now because they have too many people watching them. That's how I want it to be.
And can you talk a little bit about, you've made this decision not to go back to school, and you're going to be on this side of the Atlantic for a little while. What comes next for you after the strike? And maybe you can talk a little bit about your plans to go to Chile and why that's important.
Yeah, and after the strike and the UN week, I'm not 100% sure yet what I'm going to do, but I'm going to head west and travel through the North American continent, and then onto Latin America, and then South America, to go to Chile, Santiago de Chile, to participate in the COP25, because while I'm on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, then I might as well just go there, and I have nothing better to do. So, but because this COP, I know many people say like this COP is a middle year. It's not that important as the first COP and the COP after that. But there are no middle years, because all the COPs are as important. And this is such a crucial time. Now is when the changes, if we want to be, we need to do it as soon as possible. Now is such an incredibly essential time that we need to start doing this now, and that we cannot wait until the next COP, we cannot wait until the next big UN summit, but we need to do it now. And I just hope that we will not fail on this, and that the world leaders will not fail on this. We have to prepare ourselves for the worst. We have to think like, okay, this will probably not lead to anything, but we will still have to go on. We must still go on, because there is no reason not to continue, and so we must push, and we must act in every situation.
Thank you, Greta. So I think part of the reason why sometimes there is a feeling that people can't focus on climate change, that can't focus on the climate crisis, is that we live in this time of many crises, of overlapping crises. And the people who are most vulnerable to climate change, to climate disruption, are also facing the daily emergencies of hunger, of displacement, of police violence. And your colleagues in the youth climate movement who spoke earlier, your friends, talked a lot about the importance of fighting for racial justice, fighting against economic inequality and exclusion as we transform our economies. And one of the things we see really clearly is that the same people who are gleefully setting the world on fire, the Bolsonaros and the Trumps, are also the people who are spreading the most hate, who are empowering the most supremacist killers on this planet. And one of the really horrifying things that happened this year is that on the day that you and your friends and colleagues in this movement held this beautiful global climate strike on March 15th, that was the same day that in Christchurch, New Zealand, a killer went into a mosque and killed 50 people. And he actually called himself an eco-fascist. So in your mind, how do we weave these movements together? How do we solve multiple crises? I mean, it's not all on you to do it, but I'm interested in how you see these forces connected, the fires, the climate fires, but also the fires of hate that are so strong in Europe, including in Scandinavia.
Yes, I mean, we live in very dark times in many different ways, and it feels like we are feeling worse, and the situation in our societies are getting worse at the same time as the planet is getting worse, and everything is just moving in the wrong direction, and we cannot just fix the climate without fixing all these other issues. They have to be combined. And I mean, environmental racism is a thing. It is happening everywhere, and we need to see that, and we need to really, the heart of the climate crisis is climate and ecological justice, environmental justice, and because you cannot, I mean, of course, I don't know how to solve it, but just that we need to work together, and we need to, because we are all, after all, in the same boat, and
one of the things that I just feel that we should register tonight is that people in the Bahamas who have tried to evacuate hurricane-ravaged parts of their islands are being turned away, who are trying to come to the United States. So we see these forces playing out in real time. And this is certainly not an abstract question. So we are wrapping up quick, but I just want to ask you just a couple of questions. We are in the middle of an endless election campaign here in this country. You have said that you have no desire to meet with Donald Trump, and I think that is very wise. And you keep your distance from politicians, and I know that you're careful not to be claimed, and that's, I think, very wise as well. But there is this debate going on within the Democratic Party as it tries to decide who to run against Donald Trump about whether or not to have a response to climate change that is very bold, that spends a lot of money to do these transformations, and this counter response, which is it's too much, it's too big, it's too expensive. Do you have anything to add to these debates about just, in particular, the idea that it's kind of too expensive to deal with climate change?
Well, I mean, if the only argument, I mean, it is, the money is there. If we can save the banks, then we can save the world. I mean, I mean, if there's something we are not lacking in this world, it's money. And I mean, of course, many people do lack money, but I mean, governments and these people in power, they do not lack money. And also we need to have the polluters to actually pay for the damage they have caused. So, I mean, to that argument, I would not even respond to that argument because it has been said so many times that the money is there. What we lack now is political will and social will to do it. So to that I don't respond.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, there's no doubt that movement power, and particularly young people intervening, and the Sunrise Movement in this country has already changed, completely reshaped the political debate and forced so many bolder policies, moved the bar, and we're seeing that people who are, many of them too young to vote, have the power to actually change the political map. We're seeing it right now as we speak. And I just wanted to ask you, we're going to get a couple more words from you a little bit later on, but as we end this conversation, young organizers are gearing up for September 20th. They're working really hard. It's stressful. There's homework. There's lots of other things. Movement work is never easy. Do you have a message to your friends out there, some of whom you haven't met yet, about how to stay strong in the weeks ahead?
I mean, I know it's very hard to. These people, they have a lot to do because they are so amazing that they do this on their free time, completely for free. And I mean, they are just so admirable. And I hope they know that, and I hope they know that they have all the support in the world. Right? We all stand behind them, and I mean, it will be hard a lot of times, and you will feel like you cannot go on anymore because nothing is happening and no one is doing anything, and you will always constantly feel like you are not doing enough, and that is because this is such, and that is a very dangerous feeling to feel, especially when you are actually doing everything you can. So just know that if you should take help from people, and you should also allow yourself to be human and to rest, because what we are doing, what they are doing is not human, and they are doing the impossible. So just I'm eternally grateful for them, and I think I speak on behalf of future generations as well, that we are incredibly grateful for them, and that they should never forget that, and never let anything divide them or split them, because we are, after all, working for the same cause, and we have to remember those we are working against and those who are on our side, and yeah, just
Yes.
Going south, going south.